Morning, everyone. So this video is something I've wanted to make for a while, but I had to really think about what I wanted to say, even though I didn't write everything down for this one. So I've made a lot of videos about little tactics here and there. I've done pregame videos, reform videos, stuff like that. But, some people ask me about improving for like ETC purposes, right? Whether they're new to the game or they, want to go to ETC and kind of don't know the path to take for it. And Jeremy just posted the application for the USA event or USA ETC. So, if you're interested, go apply there. And I think he has some really good ideas as far as how to build the team in 2021. One thing I know the 2020 team talked about before we disbanded, because we're going to repick the team in 2021, is potentially some like getting a group of like, I don't know how many people, 12 to 16 people that want to play at ETC and training together for a lot longer than, picking the team at the very end, in February or whatever. And the hope is, because comments I had as well was, you look at teams like Spain and New Team where it's like 16 guys who all like each other for the most part. And even when 8 get picked, the other ones still root for them and help train them and almost feel like, go and coach and stuff. And it almost feels like their win is, it's really a country win, a Spain win, a Polish win, a Germany win. It doesn't feel like that in America as much. And I'm no better than anybody else. When I was competing to get on the team, whether this year or years ago when I was on the team, you kind of just hope you get on the team and don't give a shit. Like right, you're kind of cutthroat about it a little bit with your other Americans, and the goal should be to take a team that's the best team, right? That should be the end goal for everybody on the team, and you kind of do need those supporting pieces of like, right? If you just take 8 guys, that's not enough to train with. You need more people that play different armies, different ideas. It really, a core of like 12 to 16 guys really is more useful to talk strategy, because there's some guys who, people, whatever, if there's ever women that come out for it, but some people that are really good at building lists and having ideas there, and maybe it doesn't translate as much to the table, which is where you really need it for ETC, to be honest. Is good on the table, so they're always nice to have around, and or strategy people, high level strategy people. So nonetheless, that's the hope for ETC, USA. And this video is kind of going to start from that idea of, I want to go to ETC. You're a player who wants this. This isn't so much for somebody who is like, I just play once a month in my basement, because the you're not going to want to do what's in this video, or the steps it takes to get to the level to play at ETC, or at least from my point of view of what it takes. And so we'll start at ETC and almost work backwards to being like an individual person. And we're not actually going to, I have a rule book up. I don't know why. I don't know what to show on my screen. Nothing I say is going to be like, this is where you flank and this is where you flee and stuff like that. It is all either mental or preparation or post game things to do, because I think we get a lot of videos, or I make videos too, about like, how many dice do you roll at this magic phase? How far away should you be here? Blah, blah, blah. And that doesn't matter if the person isn't doing the right things to get better, to use those tactics in game, right? So we'll start then. You want to be on the ETC team. And I'd say some of the biggest things besides play, you can always play games and show results and stuff like that. But I think one of the things that isn't appreciated by some, and after being on 5 teams myself with a variety of characters, some are who are still in the game and some who are gone. Some of the big aspects, it's a team game first off, right? It's a team thing. It's a single person game with a team. And you spend 6 games playing individually, basically for the team, but there's so much time from before ETC to at ETC that you're with this group of 7 or 8 guys, and you really you have to like each other. I remember not liking one of the guys on the first couple teams I was on. Not the first team. The first team was great, but like the 2 to to the fifth year I played, and it kind of brings it down a lot. Like it really is disappointing when you don't like somebody on your team. So you don't have to love them; they don't have to be your best friend or anything. But I think just being generally like liked by the other guys on the team is a big thing. It's also big for being picked. As bad as it sounds, we're spending a lot of money to go over at ETC, and I haven't had to make this choice personally because America doesn't normally have the most deepest pool of players to pick from, but it's gotten better recently, and I don't have to pick the team again. But I think it's a big thing to say, let's say you have three guys left for the eighth spot, and they're all kind of close in skill. If I had to vote, I would vote for the guy who I like the most, or at least that I got along with the most, and I thought would like bring the best for the team. Because when it comes to strategy sessions, training, all this kind of stuff, having somebody who's like annoying you does affect the rest of the players. Like the points that the better quote unquote person is not going to get is probably not worth it, in my opinion. So I think being like really get along with everybody, being flexible in lists and stuff, and being able to take criticism very well. As I was saying with the whole, if you got 12 to 16 guys together, it really isn't like what you don't want is to play all these practice games and then somebody use that against you as like why they should be on the team, right? Because in practice, good players can lose if they're trying something or matchups. Who knows about matchups and stuff like that? So you really have to be. I'm trying to think how the best way to put it. I don't know. You have to take practice as a way to get better. It's not a way to screw over your other people you're playing with. Or same when you're playing just for practicing for ETC, right? If I'm playing Travis or Bergie, we're playing to improve ourselves, not for me to get like just have a 20 on the board and be like I'm the greatest, right? You're a team, and it doesn't matter how good you are if your rest of your team sucks around you. So that whole idea of wanting to improve as a team and take criticism and be able to give it in a tactful manner of like, I think you should have did this, or really, be able to change your mind of like, oh shit, you're right. I've had some strong opinions on units and models and stuff, and I finally like tried something different or saw somebody I respect try something different, and I'm like, okay, this can work, and then you kind of mold from there, and everyone gets better. Being reliable, being able to practice, being able to play games, being able to talk. It's a pretty big time commitment. Like, and people do it with kids and married, and there's like always. Sure, you can have excuses and stuff, but there's like a basic level of like involvement that's needed. Because as I said, you're going to this event with 8 guys, and I'm assuming the ETC team for USA is thriving for that first podium spot. That goal that we've never done. Really get bring home a medal. We've worked so hard building up this Discord and community. I think that there's a chance to do it, but you really need 8 guys who are really all in on it. And so that's kind of like the personal stuff. You want to be nice, flexible. You want to be able to take criticism. It's not an inter-competition. You grow as a team. And so if you can get there, now you need the skill to go with it, right? You need to be able to be good, and you need to have the good mindset. So we're still not even on improving yet. This is kind of like a mindset thing, right? I take myself, for example, because my friends will probably tell me that I obsess over the game too much as far as trying to get better. And I think you need to ask yourself if you want to get better first. Like, if you truly want to get better. This isn't like, oh yeah, I'd rather be good. Like, I'd love to be better at chess, but I do not put the time in to be better at chess. I can play as many games as I want, but I don't think about them and stuff, and I just lose. So, my own personal story of when I was younger and I wanted to win tournaments, I wanted to go to ETC, and I mean, I wouldn't sleep at tournaments. If you want to hear some, not horror stories, aren't they? Like, let's say it was game 4 was on the second day, I would find my opponent's list. I actually have walked around the hall, found my opponent's display board, found their list, taken their list. It was open list, so it's not like it was the end of the world, but I just wanted a printed copy. Taken their list and like stayed up all night, like thinking about how I was going to beat them. I was very good on game 4 because I was always prepared for game 4. Um, but I just couldn't sleep. I was too excited. I mean, hell, even nowadays in these online events, if I lose or win, if I play a game like close to nighttime, like it's like 9 or 10 when I end, I can't sleep for a couple hours. I'm too like thinking about the game and stuff like that. And I'm always thinking about matchups and armies and stuff like that. So I think you have to really want it, right? You have to want to improve. And there's this nice article online. I think it's called like Wanting to Win or something. It talks about like scrub mindsets and stuff like that, where you're going to be held back by like self-imposed rules on yourself. So, for example, what's a good one? So, I think Ninth Age is a little bit more flexible because it's talking about like fighting games a little bit more and how like if you won't do particular moves, like I won't throw somebody 5 times in a row, even though it's the best thing and they have to deal with it. I think it's a little different in Warhammer or Ninth Age because you can have army styles. Like you can say like I don't want to take a super magic heavy army. Now, if you play demons and you're like I'm gonna take no magic, then maybe we have a problem there. But there's armies out there that play with little magic that you can play. So you could find an army that kind of fits your suit, your style, but you can't do this. I'm not going to take any chaff because I think chaff is bad for the game because I just want ranks and flanks, right? That's like that mindset you can't have. If you go, or I'm not going to force people to clip if it's the best thing I can do. That's like the kind of shit that you're like, you have to do it. Like you have to force people to clip to be good at the game. You have to abuse, quote unquote, abuse some of the movement rules or the reform rules or the clipping rules to really get the most out of this game. And if you don't do that, it's just bad. As weird as it say, you just have to get past the mindset of like the construct of what you think Warhammer should be and what the game is. Because if you want to get to the top level, you can't. It just all that matters is what's allowed and how you can use it. It doesn't matter if it feels good, if it makes sense. If this is the rule, and then you have to be able to think, okay, this is how I can use it to my advantage. Whether it's the 1-inch rule or overrun, all that kind of shit I've said in my other videos. So let's say you're a nice guy, you have a great mindset, and you want to get better. Whether you're going to play a lot, you're going to review your games. I went and I asked Thomas. I said, give me 3 tips for people to improve. Just to get better at the game. And I'm going to use his and put some of my own words in there. And I have a list in front of me. And obviously you guys can't see it. But you're going to have to listen to me. So here's like some general tips for just getting better at the game. Because, I don't know, you want to improve? You don't improve just by playing. But play the game is probably an easy one, right? You have to actually play to improve. Now, the rest of them from that kind of stems from playing, but if you don't get the games in, you're not going to get better. This idea that you can play 20 games before ETC and be ready is ridiculous. Absolutely 100% ridiculous notion. If you think that way, you will absolutely not. You will lose at ETC. 100%. You will not be ready for it because it feels like 100 games in on Warriors, and I'm still learning things matchup wise. Yeah, I know what my units do, and sure, you can. I think it's this whole you don't know what you don't know thing where somebody who plays an army 20 times feels like they know 80% of it, 90% of it, and then you ask somebody who played an army 100 times, and they feel like they know 80 to 90% of it as well. And the difference is, I just know the person who's played 100 times knows that there's a lot more out there to get better at than the person who's like picked it up twice and played it. So play the game. That's easy enough. You have to play. You can't do this theory hammer all the time. You can't sit there and be like, this is my list and this is how, because so many things, you talk about it and then you put it on the board and you're like, oh shit, like that isn't what I thought. Especially like speed, for example, zoning, how scenarios work out, how like bunched up or how spread out your army can be. You don't really see that until you're on the table. So play some games. Know the rules. This one's super important, and it again, it feels like an obvious one, but take chess for example. If you don't know how to castle, or you didn't know castling is a thing, you are missing a big portion of the strategy of chess and how chess plays, right? And the same thing for being the movement of the units and pieces in chess, right? The more you, I think knowing the rules goes two prongs almost. One is the more you know the rules, the better you know the rules, the more you can focus on the strategy behind the game, right? So you're not always looking up rules. You're not wondering what the opponent's units do. If you forget what you're facing, you have to constantly look it up or constantly think about it more than a couple seconds. Then, it's hard to process the rest of the strategy, in my opinion. Also, if you don't know, yeah. So like, think of chess. If you don't know how the pawns move or the horses move, the knights move, you're constantly using your brain power to think about that. And it should be instinctual, right? A professional chess player doesn't like look at a knight and be like, I wonder how the L, he like makes the L in his head. He just knows what squares he can go to and how it works, how it functions together. So that's one thing. And the other one is you can't abuse something. I don't like the word abuse. You can't take advantage of or use rules you don't know, right? If you don't know how to combat reform, if you don't know how multiple charges work, or what you can get out of it, things like what you're allowed to do, then you're missing out on a whole bunch of strategy. Some of the top strategy in Warhammer or Ninth Age is combo charging for overruns, pursuing the weird ways you can pursue or prevent pursues, or use 1-inch rule to force clips. Like all these little things that like top level players know how to chaff people. But whether you chaff somebody backwards so that you can force them down the line, or whether you use a impassable to force, a unit to only hit you with one model, or stuff like all those little things, like those are the top level things. It's not like how to chaff. It's not like somebody you see just forgets how to chaff. It's that, can you get that extra inch out of it? Can you get that one less model in combat and increase your odds a little bit here? Can you, have a clear charge lane so it's an extra threat on arc side for arcs? Those little moments are, very important, and you need to know all the rules to really, take advantage of that. So play games and know the rules. I mean, that should be simple for any game. Ninth Age has a ton of rules, so I can understand it's not that easy. But, and in army rules, for example, your opponents, you should really know what 90% of your opponent's stuff does, if not more. And this comes with the whole, you tend to learn about that playing the game, because you play the game, maybe you lose or something, and you kind of look up maybe something you didn't know, and it kind of sticks in your head. So now you're playing games. What can you do from there? One is, if you don't blame the dice. I think that is a very rookie mistake to blame dice. And I'll never say that dice don't have an impact on the game. I've had games on my channel where I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe the 1% happened, right? But then you really step back and be like, well, what could I have done better? Like even my game the other day, like I failed like an 8 minimized check. That was huge for me. And it sucks. Like, it was actually really big now that I look back, but it's like, that didn't feel like the worst thing. Like, it felt like my strategy or some of my ideas that I wanted to do were not good, right? So, if you focus on the dice, you will either make excuses for why you lost, you'll probably miss a lot of things you did wrong. Because I feel like one of my own personal things I need to improve on is my game plan. I think sometimes I go into a game with a really nice game plan and execute it well. And I think sometimes I go into a game where I'm like, why did I even deploy there? Why did I even move like that? Why was I even thinking that's how I was going to win the game? And sure, you can pick a couple dice rolls in the middle of the game. They're like, oh, that was awful. Oh, I wish I would have killed that unit with my spell. And it really, I don't know. It's not health. I don't think it's good for getting better. I think it's a horrible mindset. Because honestly, I ever had a game where like, oh, if only I did this. And then I think, you know what? I was pretty lucky to get something the turn before, right? You have your own luck. People tend to think of their bad luck, but then you think, oh, it was pretty nice that I held this charge, or it was pretty nice that I killed this unit with my magic, or something like, or I got this spell off. So if you can just not blame the dice, and sure, there will be games where your two good players play, and maybe a critical role decides a lot of it, and they both understand that. But if you're new, or if you're not if you're not good enough to realize like where mistakes happen, then maybe that's the problem. You got to get better in that case too. So no, don't blame dice. Really, and this leads into think about why you lost, right? Like really think about like, was it your game plan was bad? Did you do a charge somewhere that wasn't good? It's kind of hard actually when people ask me after games what I thought they did good or bad, because I'm so focused during the game on what I'm planning to do that I'm just reacting to what you're doing, right? I can't, when you move a model, all I can do is react to it. And as far as like, what's my next step going to be? I don't sit there and think about, well, he should have moved here, right? That's so it's hard for me to actually help people, because when I'm looking objectively as a third person, I'm kind of looking for both people in a way, and you can kind of get in the mindset. So thinking about why you lost, I think tons about this. Like, why was my unit here? What was the purpose? If Unit X was never going to fight the enemy, right? Then why was it sitting there? That's a great example. Should I have magicked this? Could I have positioned here so he didn't get a sight? And sometimes what this comes from is your opponent did something to you unexpected, or that was good and you kind of didn't see it coming. Maybe something like that. And then you think about how could you improve on the situation, and did it sacrifice anything else in the game to do it? Like, I think that happens a lot. Maybe you lose a critical combat that was close and you didn't buff it. And you're like, why didn't I buff it? Like, did you actually do something that was better? So, yeah, really focusing on why you lost. And this is why losing is learning great. I hate losing. And I think you have to hate losing to an extent to get better at this game. You don't have to hate it to where, like, I don't walk around and trash my house or punch my computer when I lose. But I'm frustrated. I'm very frustrated with myself when I lose games. But that's how you learn to get better. I mean, you have to have the drive of, like, right? If you don't hate it, then why play? You know what I mean? You're not going to get better if you don't kind of hate losing. Write things down. This is another Thomas one. Think about what were your MVPs, your least valuable. What spells did you take? If there were any problem units on the other side, what did you learn? There's 16 armies out there with different builds and different scenarios and different maps and different situations, and you really need to take away something to say, all right, if I play this matchup again, what is like, how can I approach this matchup better? I think that is a big one for me, is that you can just put your stuff on the board and then get into the scrum of things and play the game out, and it kind of becomes this like wacky game of like, as much as planning as you do in Warhammer, once turn like 3, 4, 5 comes around, it doesn't always look the same, because whether rolls have happened or choices have been made, unless people kind of just deploy in corners and walk around. But I think, you really have to go like, man, there's a lot of games I play where I look back and I say, I could have safely done the objective, cast some magic, maybe won 14-15. But I went for it for like a fucking huge win. And I just think about it, I'm just like, I don't know, I forced it a lot. That's probably one thing I need to improve on, is I try to force winning like 20s a lot of the time. And you really have to sit there and say, all right, what's the best game plan? What's the best method to play this game? And sometimes you got to go in and try to get a big win for a tournament's sake. But I don't know. I think you really need to think about it, write things down, or remember it. At the very least, remember it and really analyze like what worked, what didn't work. And also not to take too much stock in some of the moments, right? If a unit died when it had like a 2% chance of dying, that doesn't mean it was bad. It just means it sucks, it died. But also understanding, I actually think doing the math on a lot of things is really interesting, because it depends on what your threshold is for luck in that case. But like, there's been combats I've gone back and done the math for and been like, man, I was never gonna win that combat. Like it was like, or I thought it was really good for me, impossible to lose. And then I do the math and I'm like, oh, there's like a 20% chance I lose, or like a 10% chance, and that's not nothing. 10% to lose, it sucks that it happens, but that makes you realize the reason I like doing that is you take a combat and you say, man, I was a 10% chance to lose that. And then you go the next step and say, well, is there something I could have did to improve my chances? Cast a spell. Maybe the casting spell makes it 5%. And maybe you should have did it. Or it's so important of a moment that you're like, I have to make sure I win this. And sometimes you got to take a risk and say, all right, 20%. I mean, 40% chance this works. Just take it, right? I know speaking to other good players, they're like, there's a 10% chance my character dies to one spell. And they're scared by it. They're like scared that's going to happen because 10% is not that low. So, write down what you learned or somehow put it in your head somewhere. Make your own choices. This one is a little hard for me, but I've learned it more in ninth recently than I have before. So, meaning here is you don't have to listen to what everybody says about what's good or bad. Play things that you like and see if it fits your style. Not every, army composition will fit everybody's style. And I guess part of this is, make your own choices, but you still eventually have to make good choices in the end, right? Like, you can't be so stubborn. It's two ways for me. You can't be stubborn that in your choices are the best choices, but also at the same time, you shouldn't have to listen to everybody else. And just because this person takes this unit, there's a lot of good things in Ninth Age, and people play the game differently. Like, my play style is much different than Travis's. And honestly, if we played the same armies, like the same book, we probably would play fairly different armies, and our games would look a lot different. Even if we played the same lists, the way we play the lists would be different. Not in a good or bad, like, it'd just be different. And so you kind of have to find out what you're good at, what you like to do, what you're comfortable doing. Are you comfortable being a more defensive army that magics and shoots and doesn't really push for a big win? Are you more comfortable playing for the big win, or playing aggressive and maybe a little more risky and more movement based? But you have to be willing to say, all right, this is the norm. I'm going to press, I'm going to try to change it. There's some books out there that aren't that figured out. Not a lot of people play it. I mean, one of the other opposites is ogres, for example, right? I think ogres, they're not figured out, but we all know 2 to 3 hunters, if it's wild heart or not. Maybe a cannon, some big monsters, one shaman with a lore of shamanism or thom usually. And there's some shootier builds out there with man-eaters and shit like that, and double cannons, and maybe that's getting popular. But for the most part, it's a brick, some hunters, and some big monsters with one shaman. It's not 100% figured out, but it's fairly, like, you're probably not going to see a list of ETC that does really, really well and, like, deviates hugely from that formula. At least not currently. But then you take an army maybe like, I don't know, Empire or Sylvan Elves, and they don't really have a pioneer. Like, their builds keep changing. They don't have like a super pioneer of like, this is the best list or this is the style, right? Even Beastman, Cal's list was just so good for so long. It got nerfed a little. It's still pretty good, and the styles are still out there, but people are starting to make it their own and have different ideas and possibly make them better. But you have to be willing to like use your own choices and realize that maybe, if you are striving to be the best, quote unquote, then at some point what you think is the best will be the best, right? You want to be Cal in that people take your list and call it your list, right? And whether you got there, however you get there is however you get there, right? I am of the mind personally, when I'm new to Warhammer, when I came back, I was just copying good lists because I want to learn the game with a good list, because I want to feel like I have I wanted to feel like I had the tools to win the game, and taking good ETC Warriors lists was way to do that, right? If you go into an ogre, if you're trying to learn ogres, I'm going to give you a good ogre list with like hunters and stuff and be like, go learn to play with these units because these are the ones that are probably going to be good. Because if you let the other person build their own ogre list and they just take random shit and no, they're like, I'm not going to take any hunters and all this other garbage, then I don't know. While it can work, I'm sure. I just think like they're at a disadvantage. Like playing chess with like the wrong pieces almost. Like you can't really learn the rules of chess if you're playing. I don't know. It's just not as good. I think playing, and some people love to experiment with their own shit right away. They want to just build lists, not listen to other people, and go play the game. And if that's your style, go do it. I personally copy a really good list from a good player and get good with it. Because you know that like if a good player is playing it, then it's probably a solid list. And so you can use this time to say, all right, it's definitely not the list's fault that I'm losing. I need to learn how to play the game. And eventually you get good enough to where you're like, okay, I see what they're doing with this list, but I need to change this because it doesn't fit my style. Or I think this is better because whatever. You just get good enough to make those decisions. Don't live in the past is the one that I actually put down. I think you can live in the recent past, in your losses, and you should live in them to a point of like, why did you lose? Really thinking about those games. But at the same time, like, it doesn't matter if you won, I don't know. It doesn't matter how many points I scored at my first ETC. Or my third, or my second. It was fucking 7 years ago. What does it matter? I was good in 8th edition. What do you want me to say, right? I was good in 8th edition. That doesn't mean shit now. It doesn't mean, well, all that matters now is how good are you today, right? For ETC 2021, all that matters is how good are you come ETC 2021. It doesn't matter how many points you scored in 2019, how many points you scored in 8. It doesn't matter. No one cares. Maybe they care. But if you haven't played in 3 years, then what's it matter, right? You know what I mean? And sure, some bad results will hurt your... People want to see results as a means to see if you're ready for the team and stuff. So sure, you can live in the past and that like some of your former glory might speak for your future. But, you can't rest on your laurels that you were good and a couple years ago and you're going to be ready for it again. And I think that's more of a mindset of like, always improving and always moving forward and trying to learn things. Just don't live in the past of like what you've done before. You really should be like, what can I do now and how can I improve? And those are really the broad ones. I mean, they seem pretty obvious, right? Play the game, know the rules, learn from it. I think the hardest thing people have is learning from their games. Yeah, I think that is the biggest thing for me. I'd say maybe knowing the rules. A lot of people don't know the rules fully, to be completely honest with you. I think people don't know how to take advantage of a lot of the rules. And so that's a huge thing as far as skill-wise. But when it comes down to it, I think there's people out there that play a ton of games. And they don't learn from their losses or from their game or their wins even. I mean, there's games I win and I can't sleep because I didn't like what I did, or maybe something happened and I don't know why I couldn't sleep, but you know what I mean. So learning, I play a lot of League of Legends back in the day and I still sucked because I didn't really think about why I lost. I didn't really care, to be completely honest with you, but I knew that going in. And if you don't care, if you just want to play with your models and like roll some dice, sure, I don't give a shit. That's not my problem. If you want to get better, though, you really have to think about why you lost and take the dice out of it and think of decisions, because you will learn more from thinking intensely about one game. Let's say you have one game a week. Pretty good pace, I'd say. You probably need a little bit more come ETC time, but as of right now, I get about one game a week. 2 if I'm lucky, or 2 if I'm feeling frisky, right? If you can really think about that matchup, truly like do the work beforehand, look at what the units do, look at what the matchups are, do the math on the units, think about the scenario and how the game's going to play the game, analyze the game. What did you do wrong? Did you pick the right spells? Did you cast the right spells? Should you have moved here? Should you have moved there? You will learn, you will get so much better than spamming 4 games against bad players and not thinking about anything else. 100%. If you put the work in, because all that, yes, you're planning for a specific matchup on a specific board with a specific list, but that knowledge you learn from, I mean, how many items have I learned about because I played against them and researched them and like really thought about them, and then it sticks in your brain, and then the next time you play against a similar list, you're already halfway there because you have a better game plan because you've played the matchup before. I mean, my ending thought will be, how many times have you watched a game between 2 players? It's very clear that one of them knows how to play the matchup, whether it's being defensive and shooting and not like being aggro, or deploying in a certain way, and the other guy, you're just like, I don't know what his thoughts are, and then from the start, it almost looks like the one guy has lost the game to begin with. Well, that comes with preparation, knowing the matchups, and like that just comes with experience and really having thought about things. So, you know, that's huge. I think that's almost not half the game, but that's a big portion of the game is knowing all that kind of stuff. And I need to get better about some of that for some matches. Because what happens turn 5 and 6 is kind of whatever, just kind of how the game forms out. Sure, there's being good at late game, there's being good at the scenario, there's being good at, I don't know, little movements here and there, turn 3 and 4. But if you start the game off wrong or poorly, you can make it much harder on yourself, or you can make it unwinnable for yourself. So I would say, when we talk about think about why you lost, try to think about, people like to focus on the end. Oh, I failed this charge. Oh, the spell didn't kill this unit. Oh, I broke from combat. Think about the beginning and being like, ooh, did you like your deployment? Did you think it was good? Sure, you can learn from stuff in the middle, situational stuff, but honestly, it's really about how it started. And did it start in a way that you felt comfortable with and you think could have been better? Because what you don't want to do is play the game again and then make the same starting mistakes that makes the games hard again, right? If there's a simpler path to victory or to, then you might want to take it. So those are my tips. ETC applications for USA are up. I applied. You're all welcome to apply, but those are the things to get better. And you really, I'm still doing them. Hell, if I had to pick a tip for myself that I need to work on the most, it's game planning. I know a lot of the rules. I think about why I lost a lot. I can definitely tell when I go into a game prepared and when I go into a game kind of like, this should be okay. We'll see what happens, right? I can feel it from the very beginning of the game. I can feel it from my deployment. I can feel it from when I move my models that I didn't think about the game enough. And so that's something I'm going to try to work on. But anyway, that's all I got. Thanks for listening.